Hi everyone, welcome to John's Briefs. And today, again with Tim Forsey, I have an interesting and thorny one for us here. Recently had a video on the channel of a clearly inebriated guy who ran a red light on his motorcycle and then fights an officer and takes his taser. The officer shoots him. I think it's clearly justified use of deadly force by the officer here, but there was a few questions, and I think they're good questions, so I want to talk about them. Well, wait a minute, John. When somebody takes a taser from a police officer, then the police officer can think that they're at risk of deadly harm, but the taser isn't a deadly force tool. And so why can they assume that they're at risk of death when somebody steals their taser and points it at them? We had a recent other case that just went all the way through adjudication in Michigan about that, about a subject that did take an officer's taser, an officer shot him and killed him, was tried and acquitted.
Wow.
Of that shooting. Mm-hmm. So why do they get that? Because it's not a deadly force tool, or at least it's not a deadly force tool according to law enforcement, well, but a private citizen wouldn't.
I've had lots of clients get charged with ag assault on that. And it's not fair to say that tasers aren't lethal. They're less lethal.
They're less lethal.
They certainly can and have caused death. Yes.
Well, let's watch what happened and then let's talk about it.
To win the fight after the fight, you need help. After a use of force, I trust Firearms Legal Protection to help me win the fight for the rest of my life. From their 24/7 attorney-answered hotline to coverage for the use of all legal tools, Firearms Legal Protection has you covered. Get a discount by signing up at the link below.
I don't have an idea.
Okay, sit down, dude.
No.
You ran the red light, you're
No.
pissing yourself.
No. I don't want to sit down over there.
Dude, just having to step it up. Stop it!
So I think this one's interesting.
Yeah.
Because like you said, right, a taser is not a less than lethal tool.
Right.
It is a less lethal tool.
Correct.
That certainly when you hit somebody with a taser, I always say as a police officer, when you employ the taser, you should expect a traumatic brain injury. Because they can't protect themselves. They're going to fall. They're going to hit their head if it's on a hard surface.
We had a video that you sent to me where the guy fell into the street and was ran over by a truck.
Yeah, fell in the street and ran over by a truck.
People fell down subway entrances. I mean, plus it also, and I'm sorry, I know Axon doesn't like hearing this, but there are documented cases where it causes cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a pre-existing heart condition and some opiates in your bloodstream from, like, say, a knee surgery or something, you get hit with a taser, really increased chances of cardiac arrest.
This is why, they say the use case for a taser, right? You don't use it on elderly people. You don't use it on pregnant people. Gonna catch all kinds.
Don't use it if there's gasoline all over the ground.
Yeah, if there's gas, don't use it when there's flammable material all over the place. We saw the guy with the drive stun light a guy on fire. That's a bad thing. So there's all these limitations around it, right? So it is a less lethal. It is less often lethal, and yet is it still likely to cause death or great bodily injury? No, but it's not unlikely.
Right.
So I do kind of feel like, though, that the difference in mission of a law enforcement officer in the lawful performance of their duties, if somebody takes a taser from a cop and then tries to use it on that cop, that seems to raise the threat to the police officer.
It does, because I think the statistics are generally, almost every year, they kind of hover, as I recall, right around 30% of officers who die in the line of duty are killed with their own weapon. Despite the fact that they've had lots and lots of training to prevent disarmaments, and they've got $600 custom Safariland level 3 holsters, it's not uncommon that police officers are killed with their own weapon, and that's obviously a legitimate fear. So if my gun's holstered and you suddenly get my taser from me and you completely immobilize me and I'm completely paralyzed, you've got several seconds where I can't do a damn thing, and you can take my gun out and execute me like that, and there's nothing I can do to stop it, and that. I think that does raise the concern, raise the risk level, raise the threat level substantially. I think that John poses a good question, though. How come when a cop tases somebody, it's not considered lethal force, but if somebody gets my taser, now I'm in fear of my life and I can shoot them? It is a weird dichotomy, and it's a little hard to explain, other than the fact I think that we put cops in a bad situation. We ask them to protect us and be the standard bearers and to go out there and risk their lives to make us safe. And at some point, you got to say, okay, so we're not going to allow the cop to shoot him. What else does he still have on his body to defend himself from this taser? Absolutely nothing. I just think it's a sort of an unwinnable situation if you say that cops can't use lethal force to stop somebody who just took their taser. But you pose a very interesting question. That does seem to be a double standard. And,
it really does.
And we were talking about this earlier. What happens if I have a concealed weapon? And during the tussle, you become aware of the fact that I have a concealed weapon. My jacket comes off, or you tear my jacket off, and you see my gun. And now you tase me. You're trying to tase me. Am I in fear of my life? Same argument.
Same
right?
argument.
Yeah.
Same argument. So I haven't seen a case like this actually, that I've been hired on or that I've seen go to trial for a private citizen. Now I'm going to say this. There's somebody's going to say, yeah, but then if a cop threatens to tase me, friend, if you use deadly force, this is the same thing. I've had several emails recently that people are like, John, I've seen these videos of ICE detaining people with, they don't say police on them and they're unmarked and they're just snatching people up. And so how do I defend myself against that kind of kidnapping? And I go, look, you might be legally justified if I don't have any kind of markings on me. They don't announce themselves as law enforcement and they just snatch you up. They snatch your wife up and you go, oh my God, it's kidnappers, and you shoot one of those guys. You might be legally justified
I would
to
say
do that.
that's a defensible case.
Except for those ICE agents are going to kill you dead. Like, they don't show up. It's not like one dude who shows up,
Right.
in a vacuum. He shows up with a squad, and you go, aha, I'm going to have a gunfight with a squad full of goons.
Not to mention the guy on Overwatch 100 yards away from you.
You're going to lose. Yeah. So, you're going to do this thing where we're going to say that you are dead right.
Yeah.
And I hate that, right? I don't want you to be dead right. Same thing. Well, if an officer, points a taser at me and I believe, oh no, this is going to kill me because when he hits me with this taser, it's going to knock me over. So I'm going to draw my gun and shoot him. You shoot a cop and you will regret that for the rest of the short area of your life.
I was going to say, most of the time when you shoot a cop, you've got minutes to live, if that. So yeah, you roll the dice, the game's going to happen. So
right. So, and the vast majority of the time that officers tase somebody, that they earned the ride.
Yeah.
Okay. The vast majority.
And we don't see those. There's nothing newsworthy about that. It was used appropriately. So.
And the vast majority of those uses, remember, there's something like 4 million police enforcement or police citizen interactions a year. And of those, like I think that was in Los Angeles. And then there are a number of uses of force is like any use of force is less than 1%. The use of deadly force is like 0.0014%. So it's just this minuscule part of the total interactions that are had. And if a cop points a taser at you, chances are you're doing something very stupid.
Probably a reason that happened. Stop doing it.
Yeah, stop doing the very stupid thing, right? And do I think though that a citizen, like, again, you can buy a taser as a private citizen. They sell various taser products to private citizens. And could I, as a private citizen, if somebody gets uppity at me, I'm not doing anything wrong, and then they decide to point a taser at me, and I go, dude, he hits me with that taser, and I'm going to have a TBI. I could see that argument being made, and I probably would make that argument for you as an expert. Yes, it is certainly not unheard of, and likely even, because you're going to get locked up, and so you can't defend yourself. Your likelihood of hitting your head is very high. A traumatic brain injury is a life-altering injury. And so I think you can make that same argument. I
didn't know that once the person had tased me, they wouldn't come over and take my gun and kill me with it. I mean, it's the same argument. And if we've used it for police, it's usable for civilians. And I would spend a lot of time and money researching that, and that would be prime in my defense. So I'm not saying if somebody points a taser at you, you should shoot them, not just carte blanche, but is there an argument to be made? Am I legitimately in fear of my life? Well, then don't let them kill you.
Right.
I hope you're right.
Again, the exception to that, a law enforcement officer in the lawful performance of their duty pointing a taser at you, if you were doing stupid things,
that's right.
Then you're already committing a crime. And remember, if you are committing a crime, that's why an officer is pointing a taser at you. You don't have an argument for self-defense.
So you own a record store, and a guy comes in to rob your record store, and he's 6 feet away from you and points a taser at your chest. What are you going to shoot him?
I think.
Because I might.
I think I might.
Yeah.
I think at the very least, we're pointing tools at each other.
Yeah.
Right? And we're going, oh, okay, we're playing the game of rock, taser, gun. And I don't want to play rock, taser, gun. But if we're going to play rock, taser, gun, I want to have the gun. And nope, back away from me, bro. Yeah. And but if I'm stuck in that spot, wait a minute, I can't back up far enough from him to not be subject to the prongs. I'm just going to have to go.
When you hear that nitrogen pop, that's the beep.
That's the
They pull the trigger
and you're in
fast.
big trouble.
Yeah.
So I think I might, why? Well, God, when he hits me with that taser, I'm going to hit my head and it's going to, I'm not going to be able to protect myself. The chances of a traumatic brain injury are very high in those particular cases. And
he's probably there to rob the store. He's going to hop over
Right.
the counter. He's going to take out the cash register. He's going to take your watch. He's going to see you got a gun on. Maybe he doesn't want to leave a witness to the armed robbery, and he's going to execute you.
well, and I certainly
That's not a huge stretch, I don't think, to say that. So.
I certainly think in the state of Arizona, right, if he is using threat of force in order to steal property from me, that is a robbery. He is armed in the doing of that robbery.
Yeah.
So he is so now it's an armed robbery. Statutorily in the state of Arizona, I can defend against an armed robbery.
That's in 411.
Yeah, 13-411. Armed robbery is noted in the statute that you can stop with deadly force. So I don't think you'd have any legal problems here in the state of Arizona doing that. If he's armed with a giant dildo, you know what I mean?
Well, it was Florida. Don't forget.
It was Florida, so Florida has very strong statutes regarding self-defense as well, and there's some interesting bits on that. So, hey, listen, I think the taser is a very serious threat. We jokingly call it the Sex Panther of defensive tools. 50% of the time it works every time.
100% of the time.
Yeah, but I'm not a big fan. I'm a much more a fan of OC spray than I am of the taser. I think tasers fail way too often. I think in private citizen hands, I just don't recommend them for private citizens.
They say for police, the number I always hear that they are successfully utilized by police officers 70% of the time, which I think is high.
I think that's high.
I also think that's a D- on any test I ever took.
Yeah, it's LAPD. The last study that I saw from LAPD, they showed 50%.
Wow.
On the other side of that, a good friend of mine who used to work for me, still does some law enforcement consulting for me. He's deployed a taser. He's now a training sergeant, but deployed a taser multiple times, like a bunch of times in the field, and always successfully because he always used it within its use case.
Yeah.
He wouldn't deploy it if he didn't know it was going to work because
Yeah.
it was within its use window.
Right.
Including once against a goat.
There's a story I need to
There's
hear.
a big story.
There's a story I need to hear.
We jokingly call him Goat Lightning Actual.
Lightning Actual.
Goat Lightning. Legit.
That's his call sign.
Life in a small town rural sheriff's office. But anyhow, I think that taser thing is a big to do, and I think that we got to recognize that it is not a non-lethal tool. It is a less lethal tool. I think that when you take one from a police officer, if you're trying to run from that cop, you're just going to run from that cop. But if you turn on that cop and you're going to use it, they're armed, they're in the lawful performance of their duty, you're assaulting the officer with a weapon, that's an aggravated assault all day long. Can an officer resist an aggravated assault with deadly force? Just like you can. The answer to that is yes.
My only thing here, and you and Mike talked about it, was it's almost like when I was a parent. I am a parent. I have triplet daughters, as I've probably mentioned to you guys before. But as a parent, I think one thing I was really trying to focus on, my wife and I were very intelligent about this, I think. And we said, look, we're not going to say no unless there's a really strong reason to say no, because you end up painting yourself into a corner.
Right.
Well, you can't go to the party. Well, why can't I go to the party? Well, because you might drink, but I'm not going to drink. You taught me not to drink. Okay, but there's going to be other people that are drinking. Yes, and I don't have to partake in that. But in other words, when you say no, make sure you say no for the right reason. Because if you say no, you can't back down from no. You just can't. And I don't think we ever did as parents. As a cop, I think you have to approach it kind of the same way.
Yeah.
Right? This guy, I'm not going to sit down. You can't tell me to sit down. Okay, we've got a recalcitrant child here, right? How do you deal with it? So I'm afraid that if he gets on that bike and gets back over into traffic, he's going to hurt somebody. Maybe I go over and kick over his motorcycle. We'll wait for backup to arrive. Okay, now he can walk out in traffic. I hope he doesn't. Maybe I try to get him to sit on the curb, or I try to get him to come over here with me. And Mike had some great tips on that,
Yeah, or just maybe, okay, man, just come over here and stand on the curb. I'm worried about us getting run over.
But
okay?
you raise the stakes, and now suddenly you're scuffling with the guy, and a taser comes out, and now you end up having to shoot some guy, probably for being a stupid drunk who wet himself. I mean, who was zonkered. I mean, he literally peed himself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not taking the guy's side against the cop at all. I'm just saying maybe if they're, in the gift of hindsight, which you didn't have at the time, looking at this as a Zen master, would there have been some way we could have manipulated this to make sure the public was safe and nobody needed to get shot? Maybe so, but it's Monday morning quarterbacking.
Yeah. Number one way to avoid this in the future, don't ride your motorcycle drunk and run through red lights.
Amen.
That's probably the number one way.
Florida.
In this case, not Florida. So there you go. Tim, thanks so much.
Always. Thanks, buddy.